hello to you joining us for season 2, episode 12 of A Measure of Marketing, where we are joined by Sarah Markham, who is the founder of a small consultancy called Calm in a Box. And I'm sure she'd explain this better than me, as I always say. She supports business leaders, L&D heads, HR, organizational development leads to build a more human and engaged employee spirited culture within their businesses. And we're going to focus on mapping the customer journey, but
Yeah.
also hearing a lot more about what her business does, her journey as well. And I think the parallels with marketing, learning and development, and the journeys that customers and their customers take. Would you
Yeah.
say?
Yes, very well said. I'm excited to talk to her. I've seen her business develop. In one of my previous corporate roles, she was
Mm.
there and delivered a session for us. So yeah, I've been watching her from afar really on LinkedIn and
Mm.
just like reconnected. So I'm very interested to hear how she's developed her brand and her business and her thinking over the years. So excited.
Yeah, be a good conversation. Let's do some intros. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Hayley.
Hello.
Nice to have you with us, Sarah. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
How are you doing? How is everything going your way?
Yeah, well, I've just had a shock coming back from holiday to the grey and the rain, but I've been out this morning, so I'm still trying to get out and about, even though it's freezing again. But
It does feel
yeah,
cold.
all good here.
Good, good. You've recently ran an event. Have I got that right?
Yeah, we had two big events this year. Yeah, one was the first and one was the fourth. So that's been very
Wow.
interesting experiences.
Okay. So I guess for audience sake, tell us a little bit about what you do and yeah, tell us the detail of like when you started and length of time and some challenges that you've had along the way, or yeah, give us all of the details of your business.
Okay, so Calm in a Box is a consultancy which drives performance through wellbeing. The way that we do that is we blend coaching, design thinking, and action learning. So we kind of create pathways to take teams, organisations through a process to get them into what we call the success zone. So out of what we call surviving into either producing, growing, thriving, to then sort of track that impact on business performance, which so for the CEO, the HRD, that's giving them additional business capacity to grow their business. For senior leaders, it's giving them high impact team, organizational effectiveness. And for the employee, it's giving them a great day at work. That's the aim of the journey. Everything we do is evidence-based, so we're really keen on kind of tracking the data behind the impact of the work that we're doing. And yeah, we work with kind of global corporate clients, progressive SMEs. We're in years coming up to year 6 this autumn, so our 6th birthday. And it's definitely been a huge sort of journey of discovery. So the business wasn't as structured as it is now. It was much more kind of free flow and sort of my personal discovery process. It was never meant to become a business at the beginning. So it came out of a sort of side project, a passion project. So that's taken quite a lot of thought and kind of trying to sort of put more kind of, I suppose it's clarity, isn't it? Create that clarity around who are you trying to reach, what's the impact you're trying to have, and on all that sort of story that sits behind it.
So what did that look like for you then? So if you've gone from, and I guess that's quite common as well, isn't it? Some businesses do come out of a mission, or they come out of maybe a struggle or something like that. And I guess you'd have a focus on who you want to work with to start with, but as that grows, that can radically change your audience as well, can't it? So what did that look like for you to start with to how you are now? Has that massively developed?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where sort of all the strands have sort of led us, really, and that we have a kind of consultancy part, but we have a community part, and they are kind of very much interlinked, because people come into the community because they're passionate and they have the same values as us. They want to create great places to work. They want to find more balance in their work, understanding the link between well-being and performance, and that they're interdependent, not separate entities. So people come into that community as a sort of an individual basis, and then that can translate over to us working with them in a business consultancy capacity, but then also vice versa. So when we work with organisations, we're creating community inside those teams. So a lot of the kind of frameworks, infrastructure that we have around the open community come and become really effective inside kind of the business context. So this is where we create what we call like a user experience loop, like that sort of figure of 8 that sits on its side, with lots of different sort of products, services, experiences that people can kind of tap into. And then how that's developed is obviously at the beginning, it was all sort of, all those pieces were sort of sitting in isolation. They weren't kind of being brought together in terms of, you know, a synergy and a journey, if you like. And, you know, at the beginning, it was my passion project, and it was about my sort of healing journey and me sort of learning a whole new approach to work and life, and how to be effective, how to have more sustainable impact, you know, taking into account the fact that my health was suffering. I was now a mother, and that was very important to me, and thinking, right, how do I be well to do well, rather than just kind of doing all of the time. So that's, you know, at the beginning, it was sort of that very personal sort of passionate drive. But my career before that was spent in human resources. So I've got lots of experience around working on people strategy, coaching senior leaders, creating development and engagement programs, particularly centered around workplace culture, how to drive better outcomes for people and business through cultural transformation. So as the sort of business started to move, because it was in the pandemic, so it opened up this huge conversation around performance and well-being, and what business's role was around that. So it kind of was quite serendipitous, I think, that the business started to develop legs, but then kind of tracking it back to, okay, what are my talents? What are my kind of skill sets from my career before, which is still kind of, you know, obviously important and relevant under this new sort of guise of what was becoming Calm in a Box as a consultancy business.
That is, yeah, that's a huge transformation, isn't it? From from that like passion project, as we call it. So how did you, from that customer journey piece then, I guess in my head, and like for the listeners, you've got different products that are available for different businesses and different needs. Like how did you then structure, I guess, what did your marketing look like to start with, to like how it's looked now? And I guess you've had that experience of developing your customer along the way, and then your marketing being that other layer, and it kind of working alongside that developed audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. Although it's obviously marketing and sales has been a huge development journey for me in terms of understanding. But I think in terms of mapping the customer journey, I've done a lot of work in my previous life around the employee journey. So I was kind of familiar with that concept and the idea. And I often really enjoyed approaching my kind of people role inside corporates with a marketing lens. So I'm really kind of thinking about employees as consumers, and the link the link there. So there's probably some real kind of sort of foundation blocks in terms of my personal passion and interest around this kind of stuff, but it still doesn't mean it wasn't very difficult. Obviously at the beginning it was very ad hoc. And it was kind of, there's an element of following your nose, isn't there? And I remember having lots of conversations around, who's your ideal client, what's the, looking at personas, all those kind of conversations. And it really difficult actually. And this is, I think, why we've ended up with community and consultancy journeys, which interlink and overlap, but are slightly different, but also kind of because actually anybody could be, you know, I think a lot of small businesses do that go through that, don't they, at the beginning, when people say, well, who's your ideal client, and they're sort of, well, anybody, everybody,
yeah.
and it takes you, I think, a good while, it certainly took me a good while to sort of figure out. There was a real light bulb moment where we sort of say, yes, anybody, and actually everybody would benefit from working with us. There's no doubt about it. But where the ideal client comes in is not everybody is ready.
Yeah,
everybody is ready, and not everybody is motivated to go on that journey, either whether they're coming into the community or as a business consultancy client. So actually that's the piece of work around who is ready and who is, you know, starting to build their awareness. So there's a lot of stuff around our journey, which is about education. So we used to talk about educate, engage, and inspire, because, you know, there's a lot of discussion around, you know, where you link performance with well-being, is that, you know, a lot of it's around engagement actually, because there's a lot of information out there now and there's almost information overload, but it's actually how to distill it into a way which is going to help people take action. So awareness to action is a lot of kind of the principles that sit behind the different products and services that we have going on, which are all trying to kind of get businesses and individuals to sort of shift forwards step by step. So, you know, there aren't any magic beans, unfortunately, but how do you keep those incremental changes moving forward, which then add up over time, and you start to create that snowball effect. So that's very much kind of what sits behind a lot of the marketing and the experiential services that we offer.
Yeah. Hayley, do you have a ton of questions? I know you will, because this is in your space as well.
My questions are probably less about marketing and more about who and who you help and who your customer is. Most of my clients work in learning and development, people development, kind of the HR side, where it is about engaging the employees and bringing that more human approach to work, and the shift in behaviour and mindset to be able to create a more engaging and supportive workplace. So I'm taking all this in, kind of looking at it from that side. And I've also, in my employed life, had a role where I used marketing to drive employee engagement at a time of change when a brand bought out another brand. And so I can relate to all these different layers with it all. I suppose what I find interesting is you've got different people that you're hitting, from CEOs to kind of team leads to HODs, HR, all these buzzwords basically for people development roles within organizations. But do you find your target audience, if we're looking at your customer journey, your target audience are the L&D people, or does it come from the top, from more of the business lead that need that initial journey?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's back to kind of that, it could be either, as a simple kind of answer. Great that we have those synergies around, you know, the importance of this work and the power of this work, because that's you know, a journey of realization in itself that many people need to go on. So great to meet a like-minded person and, you know, sort of sees, you know, why it can have such an amazingly positive impact. And is going to be so important going forwards as we kind of go into AI, you know, AI world and
onto that,
work. But back to kind of the personas, we often kind of observed early on that it was either somebody, so it could be anybody in terms of that role kind of definition, could be either senior leader or HR leader. Often what we found is somebody who, you get so many people who have had lived experience of the dark side of this coin, where they've had a really terrible experience. So somebody that's been through a terrible experience, and unfortunately there are a lot of us around. So it's almost like, you know, the kind of people who have their eyes open to this from personal experience. The second one is like you know, somebody that they care about. So often we'd sort of catch a leader who might have somebody in their family who's been through something, or, you know, they've had somebody close to them So either that, what we call like lived experience directly, or through somebody that they really care about. And obviously you get organisations who are more sort of prone to caring, and kind of really wanting to do the best for their people. But the other kind of trigger point is transformation and change. So when people are going through transformation and change, the human brain and change don't sit very well together at all, do they? So it can kind of spike all sorts of issues. And then when you're trying to sort of get the doing done and maintain productivity, so usually when there's some kind of change or transformation that's starting or has started, that is often a really important moment to look at some of this work. I think the fourth one is also we're very innovative in what we try and be very innovative in what we do. So the design thinking aspect is very important. Having immersive experiences. We try not to use PowerPoint. That could be interesting for clients who want slide decks. We do some slide decks, but we really like to facilitate great conversations, because that's where, when you can get light bulbs to come about, that's where behaviour change starts. So, how do you plant those seeds in a way? And a lot of that is around giving people an immersive experience where they can think or feel something different, because people think and feel something different, they're going to do different stuff. And then how do we capture that? So we do all that, have that rigor around measurement and data around that. But actually, when we're kind of in that development and design space, and the design part is very much around making things work in that organization's particular context. So, we don't come with the PowerPoint decks of this is how to deal with stress, these are the 5 points to help you get out of that. And that can be tricky from a marketing point of view in terms of how do you explain that, because the marketing stuff is information led, isn't it, and advice led. That probably is why we don't have the biggest socials, because actually don't really want to go down that route of kind of information sharing. And that's a big marketing challenge now, is the amount of noise out there and the fact that people are starting to get disengaged with the word. We've always tried to avoid the word well-being where we can, because it's almost becoming a sort of a disabler, isn't it, in terms of people, because things haven't had the impact that they were hoping for.
How do you remedy that? What's your hook in then, if you're not necessarily reliant on social media, that so many people are these days, to create conversation and to hook people in, I suppose, or to attract them? How do you go about that with your marketing?
Well, that's the community piece, right? So it's all about the relationships, isn't it? And having those conversations and peeling back the layers in terms of where people might have a driver to make some kind of change happen. I think in terms of building up that events and community network that we have, so that we've got those touch points to sort of keep, and we do have very long decision making timelines. And you've got to be very patient. It's a very long game.
Yeah. And that's one of the things, isn't it? I think from like a marketing perspective and socials, we expect everything to happen now, but it is very dependent on industry, and also going back to your point on the right message within your marketing is tricky because of what you do as well. Like, it's very individual as well, and that does become tricky because no one's experience is the same. No one's looking for exactly the same solution, and their results will be very different. And sometimes maybe you can't even track the results because of it takes such a long time for people to get past stress or an experience that's probably been a bit traumatizing for them. And so it does become tricky to have say that in a social post and to say that in your email marketing. And
I mean, socials can be very tricky, and it can be quite scary sometimes in terms of but I'd say what again we've got clear about is we have a transformation matrix that we use, and we have what's called, there's two parts to it. There's the crisis matrix and the performance matrix. So we don't focus on the crisis matrix. There's lots of other amazing people out there who work in that space. So we're working on the performance matrix, which is getting you from surviving into growing, producing, or thriving. So it's probably a bit safer in that sense. You're not dealing with the complexity or the sensitivity, or the ethics around people that are sitting in that crisis matrix. So again, that was another big clarity point for us in terms of, where are we focusing in terms of our efforts within Calm in a Box. But yeah, we're getting organisations to focus on like high performance and same with kind of individuals, rather than kind of pulling them out of crisis.
Yeah. So your events that you've ran recently then, what did that look like for you in terms of, I guess, the setup, the communication around it, the like bringing people in, having attendees there? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, and I guess the events sit at the kind of cross section of that user experience loop, with community on one side and consultancy on the other. And it's interesting with messaging in terms of we're in the process of really looking at our messaging in terms of, do we need to more clarity around two sets of messaging, one for the community and one for business, because business is moving away perhaps from being quite as open to I think a lot of businesses have been burnt, haven't they, in terms of wellbeing initiatives and programs that perhaps haven't delivered the impact that they're looking for. So really helping businesses understand that this is not wellbeing initiative in isolation. This is a pathway to driving performance. So if you take slow down to go faster, for example, that's something we're kind of looking carefully at the moment, which is hugely popular in the community as a concept. But perhaps can be a bit nervy for businesses, unless they're sort of very much on that kind of on the other end of the bell curve in terms of being engaged and invested in this stuff. We do use slow down to go faster within businesses, but yeah, that's something that perhaps we're kind of thinking more carefully about. But I guess the events are sitting in the middle of that, where we all get kind of Calm Fest is one which is around, it does a lot of the heavy lifting, I think, in terms of Mental Health Awareness Week, to put on a programme of different activities, which is back to that original kind of educate, engage, inspire. So the idea is they're short and sharp. They're not going to take, people away for long, but actually that benefits both business and people, because people don't want to sit in lengthy conversations with lots of kind of facts and figures being thrown at them. But, if they kind of start a conversation or be part of a short conversation, which then might inspire some kind of change, and we get lots of feedback that's what happens. Either it's knowledge they've already got, which has been buried, because that happens a lot, right? Or it's new information which sparks some kind of positive change. And then in terms of the live event, that was the first time we've done something like that, which was to bring business leaders together for an immersive experiential day. So rather than it being a kind of conference style event, is that actually it was practical. Huge benefit there in terms of community, because it builds connection. And a lot of we use something called story circles. So starting to introduce this idea of story circles. It was to give, I think, people where we haven't been able to get into businesses, but those leaders still wanted to have a taster of the design work that we do. They could come on as individuals and have a bit of an insight into, some of the immersive experiences that we offer within businesses.
Clever. Yeah, very clever. So it sounds like I'm really hearing definitely relationships. So you must have some great relationships with either like your past clients, just because of the depth that you will go into topics with, and then you're very focused on just future relationships and meeting people, and that's the approach that you're taking to kind of engage new customers. But there's this whole like data, and I'm hearing almost like customer research, really obviously paying attention to what everybody's saying to craft your message, craft the invite, craft the event, and obviously that business development piece for you as well. Really like your whole learning loop as a founder of this business as well. That seems like it's just the absolute core of what you're talking about here.
Yeah, it's a huge learning journey. I mean, and we're constantly iterating, constantly testing and learning, constantly iterating, constantly evolving both the content, but also the way that we deploy that content in a way which is effective for clients, whether they're consultancy or community. It's definitely not been reverse engineered, which is the big part of the learning journey. In my past life, I reverse engineered everything. Whereas this, it's been a genuinely innovative, huge learning curve with the kind of the client, whether it's a business or, an individual at the heart of it. We're stepping into the app space as well. So that's been really interesting this year. So we now have Calm digital assistants. So one eye on in terms of what capacity and potential have we got to create an experience which is digital, which is nerve-wracking because it kind of goes against a lot of our values. One of the principles that we've set is that we'll always be human and digital. So we will never offer a solely digital experience or product because I don't believe in them, and I don't believe a lot of them have worked. And this is where the backlash against wellbeing has, is now coming, because, people have been sort of shoved a load of content and expected to sort of navigate through it. Particularly problematic for people in crisis. And if someone's crisis, the last thing they want is a helpline number or a website. That we're trying the best, I guess, with the frameworks and the tools that we've got, and particularly when you're operating at scale, in a large corporate, you're just trying to do what you can. So completely get it, but we're all evolving and growing this sector, I believe, together, and we're constantly learning all the time. And someone said to me, the way that we understand the brain at the moment is a bit like how we understood the body in like the 17th century. So it was legs, and again, we're all on that sort of learning journey together, and that's kind of a lot of what the heart of Calm in a Box started, was my personal learning journey about how to work and live differently and more effectively in a changing world. So yeah, it's great to hear you kind of recognize what we're sort of doing. That's really, really lovely, because a lot of the time you're like feeling in the dark, aren't you, as a small business owner?
Yeah. And I think it's like, I think a lot of businesses, I mean, we had a great conversation with another small business owner in the 2 episodes ago now, and his business very much started from a personal mission and an really unfortunate experience that he had, and he actually developed his business as well based on just kind of being open to opportunity and saying yes to a few things and listening. And whereas sometimes you get businesses where they want almost like the perfection and everything done and like confirmed before they go ahead, and there's a lot of uncertainty by saying listen and customer research, and sometimes you're not right always in your decision. Like, you can know your mission, but sometimes you have to listen to lots of other people to develop your brand and to develop your services, and you might need to pivot slightly. So it's great. I really like the fact that that's like the absolute core of what you do, particularly in your business. Yeah.
And I think having that confidence to be agile with it and evolve, because the service, for a better word, the consultancy and the support and the community that you're providing is going to shift as this world is shifting from, the pandemic to working from home to people hybrid working, to now this wave of AI that's, creating backlash for many different reasons of how it's adopted, implemented and used, and how it's affecting people, not just personally, not just professionally, but personally. And I think it's having, that confidence just to roll with all those changes, because it's your customers that are facing those challenges or those barriers and those problems. And you can't have that all set out with nice little neat packages. It doesn't work like that.
No, although we have some interesting chats with clients about that. But one who will remain nameless, they're a big engineering consultancy, so I get it, but it's what are you actually going to do? So that's what we're also trying to use, some of the marketing though, and the messaging and data as well, to give confidence, because there is, I think, in any people field, so PR, marketing, HR, L&D, there's a leap of faith, isn't there, in terms of when you set out on some of these journeys. But the leap of faith is part of the process, right? It's part of the learning journey, it's part of the experience, and it's where the magic happens. But you've got to have the relationship, haven't you, and the credibility to trust. So, I mean, as far as we can, we're trying to, we're evidence-based, we're grounded in solid foundations around the models and the frameworks that we use, but not over-engineering it, because over-engineering it will not move us forward in a changing world. But yeah, I mean, in terms of pivoting, we've never stopped pivoting. We pivot constantly, which isn't always easy, and also have to be clever from a marketing point of view in terms of materials and things like websites, and you got to be really careful about, because if you invest unwisely, you're trapped into a set of materials that you can't then sort of easily sort of reverse out of. So that's also something I would kind of caution against, is make sure, in terms of the framework you have around you, also needs to be agile, to kind of respond to where you're taking the business if you're in a similar space.
Any other thoughts, questions, Hayley? I feel like we've gone into so much detail.
I could keep going on for days, so I'm going to rein it in and drink the dregs of my coffee.
Yeah, it's you explain it so well, and like you can see that you've got like so much experience and like thought and like just so much depth gone into it, that it's it's really interesting to hear you talk about how you developed, and just the work that you're doing overall for individuals, for yourself. It's huge. And I really liked your point where you said that everyone in the sector is kind of building this journey together, aren't they? And I really hope that you've met some amazing people that you've within the sector, that it feels like a really supportive push to some positivity and connectedness, because I think it's absolutely needed, particularly as we said, like with AI and so much digital stuff. You can really, just from the business owners that I kind of meet at networking and that I work with, they need someone by their sides to get through all of this information and help them to make a decision, because we've got to a point where we're just overloaded and like our brains just cannot make a simple decision anymore, because we've got so much comparison happening and so much other stuff.
I mean, then that's really at the heart of our business. So we talk about doing and being, and it's been way, over focus on doing. But this is the big opportunity, right, for us all as a human race. So AI take over the doing, and that should be a happy outcome for many businesses and many individuals. But that then does mean you can't hide in the doing. You've got to start facing into developing those being skills, those human being skills, which are really going to differentiate the high performers and the people that win through this transition. And whether there's the governance, the governance around it, and the checks and balances to make sure the doing doesn't outsmart the being. That's the next challenge for humankind, right? So for us to be at the forefront, at the heart of that, is really exciting, and that's what kind of keeps us sort of going, really, because and it's scary, the businesses who just don't get it, and don't see that, and also scary for individuals, I guess, who we talk about so many people validate themselves by completing a to-do list. Nobody can do that anymore, so that's been a grieving process, hasn't it, that we've all had to go through, in terms of how do I show up as effective. It's no longer about being efficient. that's going to then, almost become on acid, isn't it? Because the AI is going to take over this to-do list anyway. So you've got to be yourself. You've got to understand yourself. You've got to understand your strengths, your talents, your purpose, and figure out how you deploy your energy and your time, which is going to have the biggest impact, because the robots will look after the rest, which is the happy outcome, isn't it? If we can get there in a balanced way.
And we're absolutely not taught to be, are we? Like, someone said to me the other day, it was my acupuncturist, she was like, if you're not like feeling productive or getting through this to-do list, like what will you do? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you be? And I'm like,
eat.
I know what you mean. And she's like, oh, like, sit with it, like sit with yourself, and the answers will come, and you will be more.
It's terrifying, isn't it? And I think all those leaders who have got to their position by being brilliant doers, it's a whole rewiring exercise. So I completely understand it's terrifying, and that's why a lot of our job is holding people's hands through that. If you can get to the other side of the bridge, it's almost like two mountain cliffs, isn't it? And people can see the mountain over the chasm, but how to build the bridge to get there, and that's the work that needs to be done. But it's easy to avoid, isn't it? It's easy to avoid. But with any change through the eons of time, isn't it? You stick your head in the sand, and at some point you'll be chucked over the edge if you don't build your brain.
You will be pushed.
Do you do any public speaking on this topic, or do you have a own, or because you'd be like absolutely amazing if you do it, like so well. And
it's my favorite space, speaking. I have to do it. So we often do big events for kind of corporates, and we try and make them as interactive as possible. It's difficult because we often get quite limited time slots. So we always say, the shorter the time and the bigger the audience, the lower the impact is going to be. So as long as you're comfortable with that in terms of the outcome. But this is the place we're in as a sector, isn't it? In terms of you're sort of snatching kind of opportunities to build awareness and start conversations, which may come in that format. I was forced to sort of tell my story at the Calm Live event because the speaker I wanted wasn't able to come, and he was like, "It's time that you did it, Sarah." It's like,
step up, Sarah.
I really don't want to, but I was sort of left having to. So I understand the importance of stories. That's probably another podcast discussion if you wanted to go into that one. But we use a lot of storytelling, and that's why we have story circles, right? And again, that can be hard from the doing brain. What on earth's a story circle? And it's like, well, come and take part in it, and you'll understand the power of it. And obviously, you guys know and have experienced. I can tell, that it sounds like. It's like Brené Brown chuts that, isn't it? It sounds like you're a fairy pixie, or this is the most important work you'll probably ever do.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the conversation. It was so good. And anything that we can support you with, or like share your next events, things like that, feel free to drop us a note, and we'll add it onto socials and things like that, wherever you need us to. Absolutely advocating what you're doing. It's really, really good.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I don't get invited onto many podcasts, but I've really enjoyed it. And thank you so much for all your support, and really, really appreciate it.
Amazing.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you to everybody who is listening. Our next episode will be on Spotify and YouTube as normal, but give this one a like and a follow. Follow Sarah as well. We'll be tagging her in all of the posts, and we'll see you on the next episode, everyone. Thank you so much.
See you next time.